Hell's Angels, the most talked about 1% outlaw MC. In our previous videos, we talked about them quite a lot. Founded in 1948 in California, the club gained notoriety over the years due to their involvement in various illegal activities, including organized crime and violence. The name Hell's Angels is trademarked, and the club has a strict hierarchy and set of rules for its members. Hell's Angels is a name that sends shivers through many bikers' spines. You may think that they aren't the ones with enemies, as they portray themselves to be invincible. But that's where you are wrong. Being on the hit list of police for a long time, and with their long list of violent activities, they have made their fair share of nemesis. Just like any biker gangs, they too have a long list of enemies that are mostly biker gangs who got into arguments with Hell's Angel regarding some issue at one point of time, and before they even understood, they were on a war, facing each other on roaring motorcycles. Brace yourselves while we introduce you to the top 5 enemies of Hell's Angels. Number 1. The Outlaws. Originating as the McCook Outlaws MC, the club was founded by Electromotive Company employees at Matilda's Bar on Route 66 in the southwestern Chicago suburb of McCook, Illinois in 1935. John Davis was reportedly the founder of the club. Although inactive during World War II, the Outlaws were formed afterwards and attended the first major post-war motorcycle rally, held at Soldier Field in Chicago in May 1946. Initially, the club was founded for recreational purposes, but soon, it started getting into illegal activities and became one of the most infamous outlaw clubs. They spread their influence all across U.S. and later on abroad, forming chapters in all the nations. During the early 1970s, a power struggle for control of the Outlaws developed between a faction of beer drinkers and a rival group of club members who preferred to smoke marijuana. John Davis, the reputed founder of the Outlaws, was killed by a pot smoker and Vietnam veteran during a shootout near Lake Shore Drive on the north side of Chicago. As a result, the feud. The Outlaws' long-standing rivalry with the Hells Angels began when 3 Hells Angel bikers were executed by outlaw members in Fort Lauderdale, Florida on April 27, 1974. The triple murder was carried out in retaliation for the earlier beating of an outlaw by a Hells Angel, which took place in New York City on December 31, 1973. The Hells Angels declared war on the Outlaws during a club summit held in Cleveland later in 1974. The conflict resulted in hundreds of fatalities in each club in the following decades. From 1977 to 1984, the Hells Angels and the Outlaws Motorcycle Club fought what came to be known in Canada as the First Biker War. The Angels emerged victorious. As the Outlaws retreated into their Ontario stronghold, the Angels began consolidating their activities and expanding, moving into port cities Halifax, Nova Scotia, and Vancouver, British Columbia. The conflict is known in Canada as the First Biker War. But the first large conflict between bikers in Canada was the Satan's Choice Popeyes War, which occurred from 1974 to 1976. The aftermath of this ran so deep that in 1991, on February 20th, Darquis LeBlanc, a former member of the Outlaws Motorcycle Club who became an associate of the Hells Angels, was assassinated along with his right-hand man and brother-in-law, Yvon Martel. Their corpses were discovered in an alley near Boulevard Taschereau in Longueuil.
Death Squad.
The Outlaws, in particular, like some of these insignia, and they were worn as tattoos or as emblems on their vests by people who killed for the organization.
Number 2. The Bandidos. The rivalry between Hells Angel and the Bandidos are age-old. Formed in San Leon, Texas, in 1966, the Bandidos MC is estimated to have between 2,000 and 2,500 members and 303 chapters located in 22 countries, making it the second largest motorcycle club in the world behind the Hells Angels. Well, you can understand that they did not like being called the second best. The Bandidos Motorcycle Club was founded by 36-year-old dockworker Donald Eugene Chambers, named the club in honor of the Mexican bandits who lived by their own rules, and he recruited members from biker bars locally in Houston as well as in Corpus Christi, Galveston, and San Antonio. Like other outlaw motorcycle clubs, they call themselves one-percenters, a phrase coined by the former president of the American Motorcyclist Association who once stated that 99% of motorcyclists were law-abiding citizens and 1% outlaws. By the early 1970s, the club had over 100 members, including many Vietnam War veterans. A gang war involving the Bandidos and the Hells Angels began around 2004 after the Bandidos moved into Hells Angels territory across northern Germany. The war also spread to the east of the country in 2006 when both clubs expanded into the Cottbus area. In March 2006, a group of Hells Angels raided a Bandidos clubhouse in Stur where they assaulted and robbed 5 Bandidos members. 3 were given prison sentences and another 11 were handed down suspended sentences at a trial which took place in Hanover on December 16, 2008. In November 2006, a major police operation in Cottbus led to the arrests of 128 Bandidos members, preventing an imminent confrontation with the Hells Angels. On May 27, 2007, 5 Hells Angels members attacked, robbed, and injured a Bandidos member in Hohenschönhausen, Berlin. 19 police vehicles were in use and shots were fired. According to sources, 2 high-ranking Hells Angels members, the former president of the Angels Nomads chapter and the chapter's treasurer and former road captain, were involved in the incident. A Bandidos member left a Hells Angels member critically injured by shooting him twice after being attacked in the presence of his wife and child in Cottbus in February 2008. The Bandido was cleared of attempted manslaughter over the shooting in November 2008 as the court deemed his actions self-defense. He was, however, convicted on drug trafficking charges and of injuring 2 Hells Angels members with pepper spray at a disco enforced in February 2007. He was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. In February 2010, around 70 ethnic Turkish Bandidos members and supporters in Berlin in an unprecedented move defected and joined the Hells Angels, forming a subchapter known as Hells Angels Nomads Turkiye. This triggered a gang war in Berlin that lasted from February to April 2010. The warring clubs formally arranged a truce when Bandidos Europe Vice President Peter Maxelek and Hells Angels Hanover Chapter President Frank Heimbeth met at a lawyer's office in Hanover on May 26, 2010. The agreement came amidst the threat of a nationwide ban on both clubs. Number 3. Mongols. Originally formed in Montebello, California, in 1969, the club is headquartered in Southern California. Although the Mongols' main presence lies in California, they also have chapters nationwide in 14 states and internationally in 11 countries. Law enforcement officials estimate approximately 2,000 full-patched members are in the club. The Mongols are the 5th largest outlaw biker club in the world, after the Hells Angels, the Bandidos, the Outlaws, and the Pagans. The Mongols are designated an organized crime group by the United States Department of Justice, the Australian Federal Police. On March 11, 1977, a large group of Mongols were involved in a mass brawl with 9 Hells Angels members at a motorcycle swap meet at the Anaheim Convention Center, during which several Mongol bikers were seriously injured despite outnumbering the Angels. A number of Mongols were arrested by police afterwards, while the Hells Angels contingent was able to escape. The catalyst for the fight was a dispute between Chester Bud Green, a former member of the Richmond Hells Angels chapter who was expelled from the club after testifying against another member in a murder trial, and who subsequently joined the Mongols, and a member of the Los Angeles Hells Angels whose ex-wife Green was living with at the time. Shortly after the brawl in Anaheim, the Mongols began wearing a California bottom rocker, a patch displayed on a biker's colors, denoting the club's territory. Prior to this, Mongol bikers had instead worn a patch indicating the city in which the chapter he belonged to was based. The purpose of the switch from city patches to a state patch was to prevent law enforcement from being able to identify which city Mongols members resided in. As the dominant club in the state, the Hells Angels claimed exclusive rights to the California rocker and took offense to the Mongols' wearing of the patch. When the Mongols defied the Hells Angels' warnings to cease wearing the California patch, the Angels voted unanimously at a club meeting on July 7, 1977 in favor of declaring war on their rivals. The Hells Angels began stockpiling explosives, purchasing throwaway vehicles to be used in attacks, and forming teams of members to search for Mongols. On July 29, 1977, Mongols biker Alan Bishop was shot and killed as he rode his motorcycle in Kern County. On September 5, 1977, a procession of Mongols members were ambushed by a 3-man Hells Angels hit team in a drive-by shooting involving an AR-15 style rifle and a Soviet-made machine gun on Interstate 15 north of Escondido as they returned to San Diego from the club's annual Labor Day motorcycle run at the Kern River. The ensuing biker war would result in the deaths of 5 people and injuries to several others over the following 3 months. During the 1980s, the Mongols seized control of Southern California from the Hells Angels. On January 17, 1982, 5 Mongols attacked San Diego Hells Angels chapter Sergeant-at-Arms Raymond Fat Ray Piltz at the Horseshoe Tavern, a San Diego County bar, striking Piltz with a table before fatally shooting him. Seeking an end to hostilities, the Mongols and the Hells Angels signed a peace agreement. Under the terms of the truce, the Mongols were granted free reign over Southern California and given permission to wear the California bottom rocker. Although the Angels were allowed to retain their Southern California chapters, located in Monterey, Orange County, Riverside, Fresno, Ventura, San Diego, and San Bernardino, the Mongols, in turn, were forbidden from expanding into Northern California, which was allocated exclusively to the Hells Angels. Although none of them respected the truce, which resulted into several more bike wars and violence in the upcoming days up until today. Number 4. Vagos. The Vagos Motorcycle Club, also known as the Green Nation, is a 1%er motorcycle club formed in 1964 in San Bernardino, California. The club's insignia is Loki, the Norse god of mischief, riding a motorcycle. Members typically wear green. The Vagos have approximately 4,000 members among 200 chapters located in the states of Arizona, California, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Nevada, Oregon, Utah, and Missouri, as well as chapters throughout Europe and 10 chapters located in Mexico, Baja California, Jalisco, and Mexico City. Vagos in Ontario, Canada were reported to have patched over to Outlaws Motorcycle Club, American Outlaws Association, in 2015 before AOA disbanded in 2018. 200 members are in Inland Empire, where the club was started in the late 1960s. The conflict between the Hells Angels and the Vagos started in 1990, when the Vagos reportedly approached the Hells Angels territory. The territorial dispute led to violent clashes against these two gangs. One of the most talked about incidents that amplified this feud happened in 2002 in Nevada, which is infamously known as the Laughlin River Riot. It started with a group of Hells Angels members attacking a group of Vagos members. The brawl went onto the street, causing numerous injuries. This is just the beginning of the multiple clashes that happened between two rival clubs. On September 23, 2011, Vagos members were involved in a shooting at Jonasquaga's Nugget in Sparks, Nevada, where Jeffrey Pettigrew, the president of the San Jose, California chapter of Hells Angels, was killed, and Vagos members were wounded. The next day, a Vagos member was wounded at a rally by a drive-by shooter. On September 29, police arrested Ernesto Manuel Gonzalez, a Vagos member, at the University of California, San Francisco, for killing Pettigrew. On December 7, police announced that they had arrested Gary Rudnick, the vice president of the Los Angeles chapter of Vagos, for instigating the fight that led to the shooting. Rudnick later pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in a bargaining agreement. The trial for the two Vagos members, as well as a Hells Angels member who fired at a crowd, was held on October 29, 2012. Number 5. The Pagans MC. Pagans Motorcycle Club, or simply the Pagans, is an outlaw motorcycle club formed by Lou Dobkin in 1957 in Prince George's County, Maryland, United States. The club rapidly expanded, and by 1959, the Pagans, originally clad in blue denim jackets and riding Triumphs, began to evolve along the lines of the stereotypical one-percenter motorcycle club. They are currently active in California, Nevada, Delaware, Florida, Kentucky, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, South Carolina, Virginia, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, West Virginia, Washington State, and Puerto Rico. The Pagans are categorized as an outlaw motorcycle club by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. They are known to fight over territory with the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. They were a fairly non-violent group until 1965. A swelling mass of new members put the Pagans on the path to evolve into an OMC. It was largely a semantic gesture made after they gathered at a motorcycle race in Maryland. The ensuing incident found them branded as the 1% of motorcyclists who cause problems in local newspapers. The Pagans claim to have invented and adopted the 1%er patch, referencing the newspaper articles of the time. This 1%er patch was quickly adopted by most other OMCs. The Pagans, which have been tied to traditional organized crime, including La Cosa Nostra, in cities like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and New York, quickly became dominant in the Mid-Atlantic region. They were the only large OMC in that region, as well as a large portion of the Northeast United States. Their growth, under the leadership of John Satan Marin, saw the Pagans grow to nearly 5,000 members in the early 1970s. On February 23, 2002, 73 Pagans were arrested on Long Island, New York after appearing at an indoor motorcycle and tattoo expo called the Hellraiser Ball. The Pagans had shown up to the event to confront Hell's Angels who were at the ball. Dozens of Pagans rushed the doors of the event and were met with violence by the Hell's Angels. Fighting ensued. 10 people were wounded, and a Hell's Angel shot and killed a Pagans member. 2 weeks later, a Pagans-owned tattoo parlor located in South Philadelphia, Pennsylvania was firebombed. In 2005, Pagans allegedly opened fire on and killed the vice president of the Hells Angels Philadelphia chapter as he was driving his truck on the Schuylkill Expressway. Later that year, the Hells Angels closed their Philadelphia chapter. In September 2010, 19 members of the Pagans were arrested in Rocky Point, New York for allegedly conspiring to murder members of the Hells Angels. Charges also include assault, distribution of cocaine and oxycodone, conspiracy to commit extortion and weapons charges. 2 Federal ATF agents infiltrated the gang, providing key evidence. One agent eventually served as sergeant-at-arms, the second highest position in the hierarchy. Gang members were heard plotting to murder members of the Hells Angels using homemade hand grenades. The OMCs don't tolerate competition. Neither do they leave an inch of their possession for any other MCs. They are committed to their brotherhood, and hence the individuals to see any member of Hells Angels as an enemy. Their rivalry rises up to such extreme that the Outlaws has an acronym dedicated to Hells Angels, a HAMD, which stands for All Hells Angels Must Die. In our upcoming days, we will reveal more about these 1% MCs, their history, and if they have enemies other than Hells Angels. Till then, stay tuned.